Yelrigu namaskara. You can respond, Yelrigu namaskara. Thank you so much. It's a huge honor for me to be over here, especially with all of the dignitaries on the dais and all of you people over here. So, I'm just going to be quick about this. I'm going to speak a little bit about arts and culture and why it's so important and why this event itself is so important. Now, on our planet, we are facing so many problems, and I'm an environmentalist. I was introduced like that. So, we are facing so many problems on our planet. Like there's climate change, there is species extinction, there's deforestation, there is air pollution, plastics pollution, so many social issues like poverty, hunger, malnutrition, gender inequality, gender violence, sanitation, so many issues we are facing. And I've always believed that the biggest problem that we actually face and the biggest threat to us as a human species is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for governments to make a difference, for intergovernmental bodies, for leaders, for politicians, for corporations to make a difference. But the truth is that the only way we can bring about meaningful change is if we change our own behaviors and if we change ourselves, because the need for the hour is actually behavioral change. Now, all of us, and even I'm very guilty of doing that, but all of us constantly want to change the world. We're constantly talking about changing the world, but we so rarely talk about changing ourselves. And that's not because we are bad people, that's not because we're evil people, it's simply because we haven't empowered ourselves to believe that we can truly be agents of change. Because we always believe that we are too insignificant. If I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or if I reduce my dependence on fossil fuels, what difference will it make? Or if I use public transportation, what difference will it make? But it does make a huge difference, and all that matters is that we have to make these small, tiny, incremental changes within our own lives, within our own tiny capacities, and that is all that matters. Now, how do we inspire everybody around us to be the change that we want to see in this world? How do we inspire everybody to believe that each and every one of us is absolutely significant, and within our own capacities we can bring about change? Now, we can showcase a huge amount of scientific data, which is really important, but we can showcase a huge amount of scientific data and it'll probably not change mindsets. We can showcase a huge amount of analytics and statistics, and that'll also probably not bring about changes in mindsets. So what is required is for artists, for literary geniuses, for artists, for storytellers, to actually take these complex ideas and thoughts and the scientific data and to interpret it through the emotional language of the arts and literature, so that you're hitting the hearts and souls of people. And when you send out an emotional message to people through the arts and through literature and through music in my case, then that is what will inspire people, to actually bring about change and change their mindsets, because emotions is what matters the most. Because the issue right now in today's world is not about awareness, because at some level every single person is aware of all of these problems that I spoke about, whether it's environmental problems or whether it's social problems. Everybody knows that there's something like climate change going on, or species are going extinct, and there's deforestation. Everybody knows that all of these problems exist, maybe not at an analytical level or a scientific level, but everybody knows in some corner of the head that all of these problems are happening. So the golden question is not about how do we create awareness of these problems. The golden question is that how do we convert this mere awareness of problems to actually getting everyone to take concrete action and steps within their own lives to make a difference. And that is where all of you come into the picture. Through music or whatever it is that you practice, what is it that I can do to make a difference, and how can I use my talents to make this world a better place, not just for us human beings, but for all life. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and have a great festival.
As with such a distinguished guest, and my dear friends and my dear students, I stand here with immense pleasure and excitement for being a part of this student festival, one of its kind, maybe first of its kind according to Pradyumna. And I would like to thank Pradyumna and his team for making Chanakya University to be part of this festival. And also extend my deepest gratitude to Yuvaka Sangha and especially Mr. Sri Makesh for having us here and also giving us students an opportunity to be part of this literature festival. And I personally tell even more impactful stories than movies. For example, this movie like Schindler's List interest. I mean, you'll be really amazed, and you might not even get out of that feeling when you finished sawing that movie. But then the same impact, or even more better impact, can be given by a book like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I couldn't come out of that book after reading it for at least 2-3 days, what happened in the concentration camps in Germany during the Nazi rule. Likewise, I won't consider this as an event. This is actually a celebration of festival, celebration of language, poetry, storytelling, and this is an opportunity for all of you and all of us to get together and have meaningful discussions. And of course, we know what power words have, and of course, they say pen is mightier than sword, and of course, literature can do wonder. And before concluding, I just want to refer to 2 instances. One is a month ago, we are having a conversation with Sri Prakash Belawadi ji about how to promote Chanakya University through advertisements, and he was giving certain examples. And he asked a question, right? While we are traveling on a road, or we could have seen in villages, there will be stones that were erected, and any of us know what could be the reason. And none of us knew that. But then he told that those stones were erected just because some people will carry weights, those days, I'm talking about hundreds of years ago, or they might be carrying corpses also. And for them to lift from one place to another place, and they have to travel a lot of distance. And these stones provide as relief for those people who are carrying that burden. They can just rest it on that 2 stones, and they can just take rest, and after that, they can walk. And even the stones are of 5 feet high, 6 feet high, so that they need not to bend down once again to lift that weight. So this kind of a attitude, where does it come from? Does it come from local bodies? Doesn't come from government, but from society as it is. So how do we look at this? And these are all there in the literature. But then one more instance I would like to is, I was referring to Professor Vamshi's essay on how there's a generational shift among students. How do they conceive war? How do they conceive violence? How do they conceive about conflict? And he says that in his article, he mentioned that Gen Z have a different way of looking at things, and he was referring to the Hamas attack on Israel and Israel's retaliation to Hamas, and how do students in US universities conceive those things. And it's very, very important, because the language that you speak is entirely different from the language we speak or we spoke. And we can't even comprehend the kind of language these kids are using now, and language itself is at a transformation level. And how are we going to address this? I hope these kind of events will definitely address those issues and make the society even more very inclusive and accommodative. And I congratulate the team which curates this festival and wish them all the success. Thank you.
I am so thrilled to be here. I am so honored and humbled. I have so many stories to tell, but I'll share them for the storytelling panel and stick to 5 minutes. First of all, I feel like this is a homecoming for me. Well, Bangalore, how is it my home? I'll tell you 2-3 stories. The most obvious one, which I was having a laugh about, is the fact that I'm a dropout of RV College of Engineering. So back in the 80s, my parents pushed me to get out of my bed in Hyderabad, come to Bangalore and join engineering. And to be fair, it wasn't entirely their fault. I also had a lot of bravado at the age of 18 and thought I was going to become an engineer. And I salute all of you who are becoming engineers. And of course, I also salute all of you who are becoming writers and artists and calligraphers and photographers. The word I was struggling to articulate is Renaissance. Earlier when we were all talking, the word Renaissance came up. You spoke about the San Francisco Renaissance. I think there is a Bangalore Renaissance. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I was in Bangalore for the launch of my book, Rearming Hinduism. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that book and how it has aged, as they say, because in a way that book, or things I've written afterwards, things others have written and spoken, friends we've made along the way, all of this has conspired to bring me back to this very august stadium or podium here. So Rearming Hinduism was inspired, that title was inspired by an image right here from Karnataka, or should I say Andhra, or should I say Bharat or universe. Hampi Vijayanagara. I'm just curious, how many of you have seen the monumental, majestic Narasimha in Hampi? Can you raise your hands? All right, yes. Well, Narasimha at the moment can't raise his hand. So that's the first thing that strikes you, right? So I first went to Hampi in 2005 with my students from USF, and we were all stunned. And my students, I still remember, they walked across a shallow part of the Tungabhadra, sat on one of the boulders near the Narahari Tirtha Vrindavanam, and they started singing that 90s song called Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. Okay. And we were all humbled, Hampi humbled all of us in very profound ways. And for me, it was the sight of Narasimha minus his hand that did something to me. And that inspiration or that moment took many years. About 10 years later, I wrote this book called Rearming Hinduism. Basically, it was my response to these debates that were taking place in America about how Hinduism was being represented or misrepresented, both in the media and in academia. Terrorist actions were taking place. The attacks on Bombay had just taken place, and all the media were blaming India or blaming Hindutva or Hinduism or whatever. So I started studying all of this as a media professor, but in the back of my mind, I had Narasimha and the memory of Hampi. So I decided to use this image of Hampi Narasimha on the cover of my book. And that's why I call it Rearming Hinduism. I mean, no militancy necessarily implied. It was really literally, hey, here we have our writing hand, our hand of agency that has been denied to us. How do we get it back? Now, a few years have passed. I'll bring us to the present and the promise of a future. About 6 months ago, about a year ago, some profoundly sad things happened in my family. My mother passed away on January 27, 2023, and my mother also had a very fond connection to Bangalore, Hampi, Karnataka. She was born in Hampi, so they used to call her the Hampi Sundari. She used to be in the movies, by the way. And the 2 years I was in Bangalore, everybody used to recognize me as the son of Jamuna, and they used to say, Sakshatkar. So my mom had a very close association with the state, and a little family secret I'll tell you. Ever since Sri Puneet Rajkumar passed away, my mom used to watch his videos every day. She was a big fan. So anyway, I'm honoring my mother Jamuna in Bangalore, thank you. She would be I'm sure she's very proud of all of us and all of you, because we started with a God, Narasimha, ancestor, my mother, and now I'm going to very quickly tell you where this is leading. Another Bangalore story, unexpected. So here we are, very depressed, a death in the family, a fracture in the family, a right hand, lots of crazy things happening this year. And then I start looking at my book, Rearming Hinduism, of Narasimha without the hand, and I start feeling very bad, because we have this sentiment, you see, right? We can't see our gods left as ruins, as they call Hampi these days. We want our gods alive, back among us. That is how it has always been. So I started putting like another god's picture in front of my book wherever I saw the Narasimha without the hand. And believe it or not, last June, somebody from Bangalore, from the Hare Krishna temple here, visited San Francisco, and they brought me a Lakshmi Narasimha Vigraham, which I now keep in front of a copy of my book, and I now see my book with Lakshmi Narasimha, and I want to say, when I see so many young writers and students and wonderful gurus here who are celebrating and living the word, not just in print and type as I do, but in music and songs coming from the Noruleni Jivulu, as we say in Telugu, which is the animal world, and there is so much speciesism in the world. art, the words spoken and acted. Sir, my mother would be so proud that I'm sharing the stage with you. And so here we are surrounded by such eminent artists and teachers and guides. And so you mentioned Gen Z and millennials. I just wrote this article. I mean, I love my students and I love both India and America, obviously. But I have to tell you, after the Israel terrorist attacks, the response of so many Gen Z and millennial youth in the West has been so misguided. It has been, they have been subjected to so much propaganda that the world's future rests on you, the Bharatiya Gen Z and millennials. Okay, you are the Renaissance, and it starts here with every word uttered here in front of Goddess Saraswati. Thank you.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಅವರು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು. ನನಗೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಮನಸ್ಸಾಗಿದೆ, ಆದರೆ ನೀವು ಚಪ್ಪಾಳೆ ತಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ ನಾನು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ, ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅತಿಥಿಗಳು. ಸಹಜ ಕನ್ನಡತನದ ಗೌರವದಿಂದ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅನುಮತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೋರಿ ನಾನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. I'll speak about two things and conclude with some general remarks. See, firstly, I want to tell you I have a quarrel with the word literature. Because just like the girls sang, Sakala Kala Shastra Nipuni Sharada, means, literature should have meant the semantic arts as well as the semiotic arts. And unfortunately, we've borrowed this privileging of writers only from the West. And consequently, we have suffered a lot, and I'll try to prove how we have suffered. Taking some inspiration from the concluding remark by Pradyumna, saying at the end of the day we are all stories, and how that story has been severely compromised because of what we have done. First, let me start with one thing about what happens to writing. The strikers in Hollywood, writers went on a strike. I just want to give stats on that because people don't realize how serious that was. They went on strike for 148 days. And the studios reached a compromise with them on September 26th. And the strike stopped. You may think like, maybe because it happened only in Hollywood, but 50 writers, 100 writers, 300 writers, 11,500 writers went on strike. It meant there would be no work, coming out of Hollywood for the next couple of years. That's what it meant, and that's why they yielded. So when the strike was going on, it's still in the early days, McCarthy Institute's, David Franklin was interviewed, and the journalist asked him this question: are writers and actors' concerns about being displaced by AI legitimate or misplaced? And he answers, it's probably a real threat to them, especially for writers. Current artificial intelligence, see, he's saying this soon after, AI came out, OpenAI came out with ChatGPT. Actually, 3 more versions have come since then. They have not been released because Sam Altman said it's too dangerous to release it. The CEO of OpenAI, there's a big story of how he was sacked, and then he came and sacked the board that sacked him. But, because it's a very serious matter. And see, he said this interview was done very early. He says, current AI is capable of writing better scripts, better novels, better almost anything than humans can write. Let that sink in. Writers may not be needed. Acting is a little bit different because the personality and physical presence of the human actor has historically been a vital part of a performance as it's experienced by consumers. What happens in movies is not performance, it's a recorded medium. Performance means the audience should affect, Kavya Sahrudaya. Kavya Sahrudaya. Idra Natya. No, you can't do it otherwise. Because your behavior will affect the performance. The experience happens there. The experience doesn't happen on stage because we have rehearsed it. It is sacred. Time, shared time, space is a very sacred thing. The people who will experience it will come to the same place as the performers who give the experience, whether it's theater, music, or dance, or storytelling. Let's not forget that. While AI can replicate human acting, it cannot do such a great job of convincing us that an AI-generated character is in fact a human actor. I am not convinced that actors face the same threat from AI as writers, as of now. That also may change in the next generation of AI. Why am I saying this? Supposing a written text is there. See, we don't write we can't call movie scripts as literature strictly in the way it's meant now, right? Novels are literature, short stories literature, poetry is literature. Literary criticism is also literature. But movie scripts is literature? No, because you write action, you write description, you write dialogue, scene, you write sound, you write transitions, that's it. That's a movie script. You write verbs that you can see, hear, sense. You can't write verbs like, I'm feeling sad, because you can show it. So, his sense of frustration grew, kind of thing. It's not good for a movie script, because you leave too much open interpretation to the director if you write it like that. So what I'm saying is, the performed art is semiotics. See, if there is going to be a future for writers, you have to be storytellers. And if you're going to tell storytellers, you have to write human stories that are located in the framework of culture, of a particular culture, in fact. So I'm saying, my favorite example is this. If you can see my shoulders, I always give this in class, acting class. I'll say, supposing I say, some student, your colleague is asked by a teacher, where is that boy or girl gone? So supposing you say in Kannada, or say in English, supposing you answer, you say, sir, we don't know, sir. So look at the gesture I have made, okay? Sir, we don't know, sir. Now, supposing it's a Kannada class and the teacher says, Ellogidaravara, Nange gottilla, sir. It sounds very false because that gesture doesn't go with this language. There's an organic link, and that is the semiotic link with culture. If you get deracinated, there is this great danger. Because there's something telling in the sense, I love India and I love America that, Professor Valluri just said here. It's really important because if you lose this, then you're imitative and second class there. It's only if you have yours, you can be anybody, anywhere. And what has happened with this idea of Lit Fest around India, mainly it's India bashing. Till from this side also, Lit Fest began. It was just India bashing. That's what Lit Fests are, You bring a silly bugger from this side to sit in a panel with stalwarts, historians, who will say whatever shit they want. I'm sorry, music there. And you will have, and the person who is defending will defend it very emotionally, and people will jeer at him and mock him and all that. Okay? But if you issued a semiotic challenge, it will be very different. Ask him to sing a song, or ask her to do a dance step. Ask her to recognize a raga. like they're not at all Indian, actually. When I'll finish this part with this story. When James Mill wrote the history of British India, he said, I've taken 12 years to write this monumental work. When it was released, that book, Macaulay was 18 years old, and Macaulay said this is the greatest work after decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And in the preface, the book is available, the print is available at Mythic Society. You can open the page and read this, or you can Google, download and read History of British India, in which, in the introduction, James Mill says, James Mill is a big man, father of John Stuart Mill, the philosopher, no less. And James Mill says, this is the best history of India in the world. Nobody's written a history of India that's as good as this. Because this has not been contaminated by any contact with an Indian. He never stepped foot in India. And he's written the book without actually talking to a tradition which actually has lived on oral tradition. We know a lot of it from Maukika. That's what he said. And Macaulay hired Max Muller, whom even today I see that, everybody celebrates as a great scholar. And you will be happy to know that the man who is the great expert of India, Max Muller, professor, never visited India. And when Dwarkanath Tagore was called Prince Dwarkanath Tagore for the lavish parties he threw in Europe, when he went to Paris, Max Muller went to meet him because he wanted to meet an Indian. And he went and met him in his apartment, and there was a piano, and he played some Western music, classical piece. And Max Muller asked him, Max Muller's son has written this. Max Muller asked him, is there anything called Indian music? So Dwarkanath Tagore sang, a Hindustani rag, a classical piece. And I'm paraphrasing this very closely, though. And Max Muller said, there is neither meaning nor melody in this music. And Dwarkanath Tagore said, do you know what it took for me to get this fretted instrument, to master it, to learn your harmonic scales, to make it my own, and to play that thing? It took so many decades. For you, it took 4 minutes to decide on an entire culture. And we have done this to ourselves because of our imitative nature of ignoring semiotics. What happens when you ignore semiotics? You get standardization. Because with standardization, you get American breakfast. You'll get scrambled eggs, ham and sausage, and, salad. And, if you have some Indian touch, you want to have a live dosa counter, It destroys the cuisine. Sir, you were talking about culture. It destroys everything we have, standardization. And standardization is necessary for the big producers, for the big Western capital, because only with standardization you can have mass production. If you have individual tastes, if India is a bothersome country, so many cultures, I can imagine the frustration. Somebody comes and says, your God is nonsense, and then somebody breaks the arm of Narasimha Swami. And but there is somebody who picks up mud and says this is sacred, who takes leaf and says this is sacred, who takes flower and says this is sacred. It's the semiotic power of Indian culture, it is. Actually, Bharatiya culture. India has to grow up, actually, still. So, I conclude with this thing, because I think I've already taken time, 3 minutes. Why is AI such a challenge to you? Trust me, it will write better than you. It is writing better than you. The database is not available to it still because we don't have translations of all the works of the world in English yet. But AI will know how to translate, and generative AI will know how to translate it really well, idiomatically also. Because, it will do billions of references. So this is the story I'll tell, with a conclusion for it. In 1996, IBM came out with Deep Blue, the first supercomputer. And as a marketing gimmick, IBM invited the greatest chess player of that time, some people call him the greatest grandmaster ever, Garry Kasparov, to a match. Those days it was unbelievable. Now you do, from Candy Crush to everything, but those days machine playing games was not still thought of. Kasparov laughed. IBM said, this is in Philadelphia, said, the prize money is $1.5 million, and even if you lose, we'll share 50% with you. He went and played. He got shocked the first day because the machine was playing so well. But in 5 or 6 days, Kasparov actually defeated Deep Blue. The next year, they invited him again for a rematch in Manhattan. By this time, it had become big. The media was there from everywhere. And Kasparov played. Took 9 days, and he walked away, conceding defeat from the machine. And Kasparov said this thing, see what happens when quantity becomes quality. What he meant was that it's not that the machine is intelligent. IBM said, we learned a lot from the first game, and we changed, we input some more stuff into that machine. And the computer can now do, this is 1997, nearly 30 years ago, the computer can now do 10 to 20 million moves per second in its head. What human being can match that? It's just computational power. You make a move, in a second, one crore moves. It can calculate. What does it mean? Actually, 100 to 200 million moves a second. Actually, 10 crore, it could calculate. Today, so supercomputers are made by AI and robots and machines because it's in nanometers, the chips, you can't even see the printed circuits. So what am I telling you? This is really serious. And a concluding example of that I'll tell you. On May 1st, Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, has anybody heard of him? Anybody here? Thank you, Professor. See, Geoffrey Hinton is known as the godfather of AI. It was because of the work he and his students did at the University of Toronto that OpenAI could release ChatGPT. Seminal work in 2012. He was working for Google. 50 years of his life in AI. He's an important person not only because of what he did as invention. He's important because he was not only a computer scientist, he was also a cognitive expert. He understood human psychology. 50 years of his life he devoted to AI. On May 1st, he resigned from Google and told the world. It was reported in the New York Times first. Please Google and see this. On May 2nd, dateline May 2nd, last year, 2023, he said, I regret my life's work. I'm afraid now that AI will exterminate humanity, will remove humans from the planet. He said even more scary things later. Please Google him. Actually, I said this to my daughter, a young person like you, and my daughter said something startling and true. She said, Appa, that is because it gets the prejudice from us. We valorize people who get 97, 99, 100, 104 if you wish in maths out of 100. We valorize people only with certain talent. If they have other talent, we don't care so much about them. Actually, the qualities of empathy, of identification by community, all of that is looked down upon. You don't intuition, you mock it. But if you want to, the stuff you're valorizing, AI will do better. All diagnostics has already been handed over by the medical world to AI. Soon, no surgical intervention, certainly in oncology first, will be given to humans because errors cannot be tolerated. What I'm saying is, what will save you as artists, writers, that means both semantics and semiotics. You should not separate them. It is all sahitya, okay? Not literature, it is sahitya. You can preserve, we can preserve ourselves. First lesson, if somebody asks you, you should not say, I'm an individual free soul in the cosmos. You must say, I'm ethnocentric. I belong to my family, to my street, to my locality, to my city, town, to my state, and to my country. Then you can talk about being Vishwamanava. You cannot be global without being intensely local. So you must identify yourself as one among everyone. Yellaralu vandagiru mankutimma. DVG says, no? That's what you have to be. That's the first lesson. The second thing is, let us begin to revalorize human goodness, scruples, kindness, caring for another person, not demanding the most, from somebody who's working under you. Get as much as you can from that person, as much as that person can actually deliver. Don't stress the person more than that. And if you can do more, I'm quoting Gandhi here. For whatever else he may have done, this is a good quote for me. He says that, if you've been given more than you need, it has been placed in trust with you so that you can do good with it. So that idea of trusteeship, if you're more, and you do it for your community, you look after the people who can't be looked after. Remember, in India, we cannot outsource the care of the old, of the disabled, to institutions of the state. The family is the core of India. However unfashionable this sounds, I'm telling you, we must preserve Indian traditions if you want to preserve India and yourself. Otherwise, you'll be reporting after you graduate to a CEO who is a robot soon. Thank you.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಸುಂದರ ಸಮಾರಂಭದ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಆಸೀನರಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗಣ್ಯರೇ, ಮಧ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಮುಂದೆ ಕುಳಿತಿರುವಂತಹ ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಸಂಭ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಲು ಬಂದಿರುವ ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ, ನನ್ನ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷೀಯ ಭಾಷಣದ 2 ನುಡಿಗಳನ್ನು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ನಾನು ಒಂದು ತತ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಬದ್ಧನಾಗಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಯಾವುದೇ ಸಮಾರಂಭದಲ್ಲಾಗಲಿ ಕೊನೆ ಭಾಷಣಕಾರ ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು ಮತ್ತು ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಗನಾಗಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ಒಂದು ತತ್ವಬದ್ಧ ಅದು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈಗ ನಾನು ಕೊನೆ ಭಾಷಣಕಾರ ಮತ್ತು ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷೀಯ ಭಾಷಣ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬಹಳ ಸುಲಭ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಸಮಾರಂಭದಲ್ಲಿ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ನನಗಿಂತಲೂ ಮುಂಚೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಿದಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಏನೇನು ಹೇಳಬೇಕೋ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ವಿಚಾರನೂ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಬಹುಶಃ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು 2 ಮಾತು ಭಾಳ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತವಾಗ್ಬೋದು ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಮತ್ತು ಫ್ರೀ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಎರಡರ ಒಂದು ಕಾಣಿಕೆ ಈ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಸಂಭ್ರಮ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಧೆಗಳು ಇದೆ ಮತ್ತು ಉತ್ಸವನೂ ಕೂಡ ಇದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅವರನ್ನು ಹಿಡಿಯೋದು ಕಷ್ಟ. ಆದರೆ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಮತ್ತು ಫ್ರೀ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಎರಡು ಈ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಭಾಳ ಅಚ್ಚುಕಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ 1-2 ನುಡಿಗಳು ನಿಮಗೇನಾದರೂ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಇದು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಅಥವಾ ಈ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸ್ಥಾಪಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅಂದುಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು 1943ರಲ್ಲಿ. ಇದರ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆ ಮಾಡಿದಂಥ ಮಹನೀಯರಿದ್ದಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅವರು ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು 1923ರಲ್ಲಿ. ಅವರಿಗೆ 20 ವಯಸ್ಸು ಆದಾಗ 1943ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಯುವಕರಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಏನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಲ್ಲ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ಅದು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆ ಆಯಿತೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. 1943ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರು ಹಿರಿಯ ರಾಜಕಾರಣಿ, ಬಹಳ ಸಭ್ಯ ರಾಜಕಾರಣಿ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡವರು VS ಕೃಷ್ಣಯ್ಯರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಇದ್ದರು. ಅವರ ಜೊತೆಗೂಡಿ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥಾಪಕರಾದಂಥ ಅಣ್ಣಯ್ಯನವರು ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಯುವ ಶಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಏನು ಬೇಕೋ ಅದನ್ನು ಕೊಡೋಣ ಅನ್ನೋ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಇದೊಂದು ಪ್ರೇರಣೆ ಪಡೆಯುವಂತಹ ಕೆಲವು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ 1943ರಲ್ಲಿ ಯುವಕರನ್ನು ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಸಂಗ್ರಾಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಬೇಕೋ ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಅದು ಉತ್ತೇಜನ ನೀಡಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ, ಮತ್ತು 1948ರಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಏನಾದರೂ ಯುವಕರಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಲ್ಲ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ಬಹುಶಃ ಅನ್ನದಾಸೋಹನೂ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಯಿತು ಮತ್ತು ಅಕ್ಷರ ದಾಸೋಹನೂ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಯಿತು. ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಲೋಯರ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ರಿ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಫ್ರೀ ಕೋಚಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತು ಒಂದು ರೀಡಿಂಗ್ ರೂಮ್ ಕೂಡ, ಆ ರೀಡಿಂಗ್ ರೂಮ್ ಯಾರಪ್ಪ ಅದನ್ನು ಇನಾಗ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಅಂದರೆ ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರು. ನಮ್ಮ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘದ ಒಂದು ರೀಡಿಂಗ್ ರೂಮ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು ವಾಚನಾಲಯ, ಅದನ್ನು ಇನಾಗರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರು. ಯಾವಾಗ 1948ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಆ ದಿವಸದಿಂದಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಯುವಕರಿಗೆ ಅನೇಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದೆ. 1960ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹೈಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ನಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಫ್ರೀ ಕೋಚಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಒಂದು ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಮಾರು 5,000 ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಫ್ರೀ ಕೋಚಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ಗೆ ಅಟೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಇದುವರೆಗೂ ಬಹುಶಃ ನನಗನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ 3 ಲಕ್ಷಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಾವು ಫ್ರೀ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇವೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕೂಡ ನಮಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಹೇಗೆ ಬೆಳೀತಾ ಬಂತು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಅದು ಇವಾಗ ನಾವು ಸುಮಾರು 52 ಪ್ರಕಾರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತು ಯುವ ಶಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಉತ್ಸಾಹವನ್ನು ತುಂಬುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲೂ ಎಲ್ಲ ರಂಗದಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತು ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಪ್ರವೇಶ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಂತಹ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಅವರ ಟ್ಯಾಲೆಂಟ್ ಏನಿದೆ, ಅವರ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ನಿಜವಾದಂಥ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಏನಿದೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನೇನು ಅವಕಾಶಗಳನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸಬೇಕೋ ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅವಕಾಶಗಳನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಲಿಟ್ರೇಚರ್ ಫೆಸ್ಟ್ ನಾವು ಮೊದಲನೇ ಸಾರಿ ನಾವು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಬಹುಶಃ ಇನ್ನು ಮುಂದೆ ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ ನಾವು ಈ ಲಿಟ್ರೇಚರ್ ಫೆಸ್ಟ್ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾವು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಧೆಗಳು ಇದೆ ಮತ್ತು ಉತ್ಸವದ ರೂಪದ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ಎರಡನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಬಹುಶಃ ಇದರ ಒಂದು ಬ್ರೋಷರ್ ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ತಲುಪಿದೆ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಏನೇನು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ 2 ದಿವಸ, ಇವತ್ತು ಮತ್ತು ನಾಳೆ, ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶಕರಾಗಿ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ ನೋಡಿ ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ ಆಯಿತು. ಮತ್ತು ಕೆಲವ್ರನ್ನ ನಾನು ಮೊದಲನೇ ಸಾರಿ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಭೇಟಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ವಂಶಿ ಸರ್ ಆಗಲಿ, ರಿಕೀಶ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರಕಾಶ್ ಬೆಳವಾಡಿ ಸರ್ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಮದರ್ ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಪರಿಚಯ ಇದ್ರು. ಮದರ್ ಅವರು ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಅವರು ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಕಲೀಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ನಮ್ಮ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಟ್ಗೆ, ಆರ್ವಿನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಅವರು ಆಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ವಿ ವರ್ ಆಫರಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಲಿಟ್ರಸಿ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಸೀನಿಯರ್ ಸಿಟಿಸನ್ಸ್. ಆ ಒಂದು ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರ ತಾಯಿಯವರಿದ್ದರು. ಅವ್ರು ಎಷ್ಟು ಶ್ರಮ ವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು, ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆ ಕಾಲದಿಂದಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹುಶಃ ಪ್ರಕಾಶ್ ಬೆಳವಾಡಿಯವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಅಂಥವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು, ನಮಗೆ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಮತ್ತು ರಾಜೇಶ್ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ರಿಕೇಶ್ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ವಂಶಿಯವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರು ಎಲ್ಲರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಅಥವಾ ಅವರಿಂದ ನೀವು ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಪಡೆಯುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಅವರು ನಿಮಗೆ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಸಿಗುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಅಲ್ಲ. ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಪರ್ಧಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಉತ್ಸವದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಈ ಅವಕಾಶವನ್ನು ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ನೀವು ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಮಿಸಿದಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹುಶಃ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಭಾಳ ಉತ್ಸಾಹದಿಂದ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ತೀರಾ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಈ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಜೋಡಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಾಯೋಜಕರು, ಚಾಣಕ್ಯ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಫ್ರೀ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಹೀಗೆ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘದ ಜೊತೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ಜೋಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಾವು ಭಾಳ ಎತ್ತರಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳೆಯುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶಗಳು ನಿಮಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಇದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಮೂಲ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಯುವಕರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣದ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಯಾನ ಏನಿದೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗುವಂಥದ್ದು ಮತ್ತು ಅವರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಶಕ್ತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಓದಿಸಿ ಬೆಳೆಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಈ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘದ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಭಾವಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಶ್ರೀರಕ್ಷಣೂ ಇದೆ, ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಇದೆ ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಸಹಕಾರ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಬಹುಶಃ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪ್ರಪಂಚವನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ತಲುಪ್ತೀವಿ ಯುವಕ ಸಂಘದ ಮೂಲಕ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಂಭ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗಿಯಾಗಿರುವಂಥ ನಿಮಗೆ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ವಂದಿಸ್ತಾ, ಹಾಗೆ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಇರುವಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಹಿರಿಯರು ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ವಂದಿಸ್ತಾ, ಈ ಒಂದು 2 ದಿವಸದ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಏನಿದೆ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಹಾರೈಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷೀಯ ನುಡಿಗಳನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.